Well, it's certainly been a while since I made a proper video on this channel. In fact, you could say I've been practically dead for a while now. A dead monkey. By the way, dead monkey is dead. You can leave your daffodils on the coffee table. No need to worry, I'm more or less the same goober who made this channel and started a character analysis series 8 years ago and still haven't finished it. Since the third video, I've stated over and over again that I was working on the script for the next video, and haven't delivered anything since. Hell, I made a bold claim that I would have the last 3 scripts for the SpongeBob project finished within the year 2020, because frankly, I was trying to rush things and then COVID happened. Also, I never meant for the 2020 joke to be an actual thing, by the way. That was meant to be an exaggerated, dumb joke. Offline, I've worked full-time for the past 3 years since Big Coco came to town, which has only made it more difficult for me to focus on working on one project at a time. And god damn it, I have too many projects, both video and music, that I want to work on. I can barely concentrate on my orange juice carton in the morning. It's true, I've uploaded a small handful of videos, but it's been mostly cicadas on this account. I've chimed back in every once in a while, tickling your chins with broken promises of a grand return, but I sure have been posting a lot on the Squeaky Mushroom channel as of late. It's more of a Let's Play channel, and also we'll have some like voice acting stuff too, so you should go check that out if you like some alternative content. But how long has it been since I've made an actual video, or more specifically, a video pertaining to a certain topic? A topic that has been hanging over this channel like a small dark cloud, because this channel isn't even that big. Holy shit, Pickles, 3,000 people subscribe to this channel since I've been gone? Hi guys. Well, this is alien to me. You know what else is weird? If you look up Mortified Productions, you'll see SpongeBob right next to it. I guess this means I've made a dent somewhere on the side of your fucking truck. But maybe this will change in the near future. You probably notice a few things are different since my return, don't you? At least those of you who first came across this channel when I was more consistently active. This isn't Mortified Productions anymore, if you couldn't tell. So allow me to formally reintroduce myself. Hi there, I'm Beakman. Welcome to Beakman's Void. Greetings, fellow SpongeBoomers. I'm back.
What the fuck did he just call us?
Get off the internet, you dick! Wait, is that term offensive? I mean, I can assume a certain portion of you are in your mid-20s to early 30s based on my analytics from years ago. You see, SpongeBoomer is meant to describe millennial SpongeBob fans who are forever stuck in the comfort zone of the first 3 seasons. And for years, I embraced the sentiment, not the title because I just discovered it a few years ago on Urban Dictionary, even if the term is unintentionally ageist. But from this point forward, I embrace the title. I am 30 years old. I was 22 by the time my first SpongeBob video for Mr. Krabs came out 8 years ago. And boy, howdy did it age like a jar of mayonnaise out in the hot sun, along with a certain portion of the content on this channel. Thanks for the inspiration, Papa Franku, AVGN, Mobro Studios, Mr. Enter, I Hate Everything, YMS, A Dose of Buckley, Zero Punctuation, Cat Icarus, Nostalgia Critic before hashtag change the channel happened, NH3H3 before he became a rich, out-of-touch dumbass. Wanna know something else that sends a shock up my spinal cord? This channel is now over 10 years old. How did time go by so quickly? Feels good to be making content again, or at least trying. My crippling ADHD and depression would let me. But yes, humble viewer, I've pretty much been a fan of this show since the night it aired after the 1999 Kids' Choice Awards, when I was old enough to half-heartedly comprehend the things I saw on the television screen at the ripe age of 6. I was one of the lucky few who got to experience this once-in-a-lifetime event, along with the 13 other people who did as well. I am seriously that privileged. If it isn't blatantly obvious by now, the show is highly nostalgic to me. If the 2 hours and 13 minutes worth of SpongeBob-related content on my channel wasn't some kind of a dead giveaway that I have a weird hyperfixation on this cartoon, I have no damn clue how you'd be able to figure it out otherwise. Actually, I wouldn't call it a hyperfixation, more like I just hold a very strong affinity with it. Not just because I have some really fond memories watching the show, I've also formed close bonds with people over the course of time quoting episodes from the first 3 seasons. It's not a show that I would normally binge watch like King of the Hill or Adventure Time, but I do like coming back to the first 3 seasons every once in a while, because I'm molded in my ways. To be honest, I made the original 3 videos because I wanted to try and make some long-form analysis videos of my own to entertain my friends and talk about some of the shit that I noticed when I decided to watch later episodes myself. I also had some old buddies of mine, both from college and from the internet, get involved with the weird skit ideas I had as well, for the sake of having fun. Little did I know that years later they would reach some pretty high numbers, which I didn't expect to happen. I just wanted to share my love and nostalgia for the show as I remembered it in the most awkward way that I could, but with a lot of ridiculous adult humor, because I love that shit. And there's already a lot of fan-made adult humor surrounding SpongeBob with memes for some reason. I was just adding to the shitegeist. Fast forward into the future, my perspective isn't exactly where it was back then. I still have memories of watching the series through at least season 9, but frankly, I got fucking sick of it. Well, some brave souls actually went through with analyzing the entire show on this platform. I didn't have the mental stamina to do it. There's only so much I could take of hearing the grass skirt chase over and over and over again, especially when it's in every damn episode. You think I'm joking? This song was one aspect of the show that drove me nuts. So nuts that I could probably open up a fucking peanut plant. But after years of trial, error, and a myriad of mental blocks and existential crises, I've gently chipped away at my creative frustration like a cluster of ice built up in the freezer compartment of a mini fridge. And I finally managed to break free from my creative restraint. Now here I am. Since I've been gone, I've come to realize that the show is pushing 13 seasons now. 4 whole seasons have come out since I stopped talking about this show, and anything can happen within the span of 4 seasons, even if those seasons get split up into multiple years per season. That means I have more ground to cover, and Time's arrow does not reverse nor stand still, it merely marches forward. I've had a bad taste lingering in my mouth from those days, but today I'm willing to try and make peace with it, with Listerine. At some point within the past few years, please bear with me, I purchased a copy of SpongeBob SquarePants Season 12 from a local grocery store just to see what the show has been up to since I stopped watching. Lo and behold, I discovered that they turned SpongeBob into complete stoner fuel, and I fucking love it. Now, I admit I was initially looking at this with a bit of a sardonic mindset. I came into this anticipating another boring slogfest full of the same regurgitated plot points from previous episodes with little to no entertainment value for an old fart like me. If I need to systematically explain and illustrate every problem that I have with what the show became, let me try and simplify it. But first, an abbreviated history lesson. After the first movie, most of the writers from the first 3 seasons, primarily the ones who started during season 2, flew the coop because the creator wanted to end the series. Due to high sales and rectal thermometers, Big Corpo Nickelodeon wanted to keep the series going, so they brought in some new blood. From seasons 5 through 9, the show has been very hit and miss for a myriad of reasons, including characters becoming way too unlikable, each character's personality being reduced to one singular interest, more filler than an Oscar Mayer hot dog in a fiberglass insulation factory, dumbed down dialogue, overhyped specials that turned out to be underwhelming shitfests. The list of nitpicking goes on. When this show is good, it's good. When it's bad, it will either piss you off, bore you, gross you out, or make you regret your life choices, or all 4 at once. Back on topic, out of the 51 segments that I consumed, I was expecting a big load of frog cum, but what I got by the end of season 12 was a fun, heartwarming, and mostly entertaining experience, with a moderate amount of frog cum. What can I say? It averted my expectations, like an ulcerative colitis flare-up. Now what else could I say? These new episodes make me feel like a kid again. I mean, they obviously know that a lot of us old goobers in our 30s are still watching the show so that we can shout at our computer screens as if anyone can hear us while we eat our dino nuggies. They finally heard our prayers. The almighty clipboard carriers at Nickelodeon Studios finally figured shit out. It's like they took notice of all of our complaints over the years, glanced over at the insane pallet of cash they had sitting in the corner of their office conveniently next to the photocopy machine, then gazed upon the ants down below from their steel towers like the all-powerful elite droids they are. Then they looked at their warehouse of SpongeBob DVDs of seasons 5 through 9, simultaneously shouting like a hive mind in unison, "Oh my dear," in a monotone, then swiftly turned to the animation department, cracked a menacing smile, breaking out in maniacal laughter as one of the droids approached an animator, placed their icy cold hand on their shoulder, and sensually whispered in their ear, "More butt jokes." This is exactly what happened too. I should know, because I was there, in spirit. They also must have realized that it's probably best to have more creative input from the person who created the show itself. That's right, they've managed to get Stefan Hellenberg back on board for at least produced 2 more seasons from season 10 to 12 as an executive producer before he tragically passed away due to ASL complications back in 2018, before the first episode of the 12th season aired. Since he passed, we got a couple of spin-offs. Spin-offs that sure have conjured up a buttload of controversy due to the uncertainty of Steve's approval, even though according to a few important people, he was apparently aware that they were being made and trusted his friends in doing what they could with them, at least with one spin-off, despite some pretty damning responses from other people who were also friends with Steve and have extensively worked on the show too. Then some delusional fuckwits made death threats towards these creatives for their posts because they're bottom-feeding low-life pieces of shit. This is why people don't take cartoon fan bases seriously, folks. Although at the end of the day, these spin-offs were pitched out of corporate greed from some CEOs who wanted to capitalize on the brand because they know that every franchise has some sort of shelf life, and the more content you produce, the more likely the property you're promoting will remain in the public subconscious, especially if you know what you're doing with marketing, even if it turns out to be mediocre. One spin-off was a show that was meant for babies that became the center of controversy surrounding the timing of its announcement because it was pretty much after the creator died, among a myriad of other things revolving around the show's quality. The other spin-off being about Patrick's journey through the wonderful world of bath salts and Sunkissed. We also got a third movie, a movie that I don't care to see, but I might have no choice at this rate. Then again, according to the director, the movie was partially written by Steve and was supposed to be a tribute of sorts to him, though considering all of the controversy surrounding the movie, I can imagine the backlash on what happens in the movie is fully justified. But I haven't seen it, so I don't have an opinion. Oh, what do you know? They've already announced a 4th movie. And a 5th? Jeez, didn't we just get a 3rd one? Does Nickelodeon ever give their creative staff a chance to breathe, or do they need to breathe on their own time because they aren't being paid to breathe? Realistically, corporate Nickelodeon probably wanted their insane merchandising scheme to become their priority, and water on the floor makes your socks wet. What is it with cute yellow mascots and aggressive merchandising? I guess the color yellow was synonymous with dopamine and piss. If this season was the last season, I honestly feel like this would have been a fantastic way to end the series on a good note. But let's be real here. They're just throwing money in every direction and milking it for everything that it has. And I am one of those sorry bastards for buying a physical copy of season 12 to talk about it. I am directly supporting the enemy here. I am not part of the solution. I am part of the problem. And it looks like the show is at least going to be running till 2025. But why the fuck would they stop there? How could they stop? SpongeBob is supposed to go on forever. It would fuck with the natural order of things if we stopped seeing new SpongeBob episodes. For Christ's sake, at least make it to season 20 before you pull the plug, like any network with functioning brain cells. Even though I subjectively love this season, if this show was milk, it would make my mini fridge smell like shit. It would compete with a London broil I bought last week, but I felt like eating a little healthier, so I went with a sockeye. Speaking of which, I think I better put too much salt on this salmon fillet. Does anyone have some goddamn water? The sodium content is affecting my vibe.
Bruh, are you high on something?
No, not besides your mom. Despite all the cynicism I felt over the years, it feels nice to finally relax my anus a bit and enjoy something for once. Do I think it's perfect? Of course not. I mean, I can't say I quote most of these episodes almost verbatim with friends and like-minded people like I do with the Golden Era. In my eyes, it isn't that memorable, but for what it's worth, compared to some of the shit I've seen during the course of the show's development, I've really enjoyed my time with it. 12 seasons down the line without watching anything past season 9 during my video hiatus, I am so happy to see SpongeBob reach this level of quality. But why did it take 5 whole seasons to get to this point? I say 5 because it wasn't until the 10th season where shit started to turn around. I've seen some episodes from seasons 10 and 11, by the way, and Steve's involvement definitely shows for itself. I have a feeling that not only was the staff encouraged by his influence, but they genuinely wanted to make him proud. I could sit here in the comfort of my cheap $60 some-assembly required swivel chair and make exaggerated jokes with cheap drawings about the corporate folk enforcing slave labor, but the vibe that I actually get from the creatives is that they wanted to make something special out of this season, and they had the time and resources to do so. They probably knew that this would have been one of the last things that Hillenburg was directly involved with, besides Camp Coral and apparently the 3rd movie. I don't remember Hillenburg making things super public that he was having as many health issues as he did, besides when the news initially broke out. I get the impression that he was a very private person. Considering a lot of these people were good friends of his and worked with him on the show, I think they really wanted to put their hearts into it for him. Though, of course, course, on the corporate side, I assume that what matters the most to them is how much cabbage they can harvest, based on the fact that they're continuing to try and drag Steve's creation to the end of the stratosphere. Even with that, it doesn't lie on the creatives who've only shown how incredibly humble they are to have the opportunity to make a living out of what they do. I'm talking about the monkeys who are pulling the levers at the top. They better be treating them right, and they better have the time and resources that they need to make the absolute best content that they can, which, given the more recent upgrade in quality in the main show, I think the extra production time is perfectly justified. Either way, I never thought I would consistently laugh at newer SpongeBob episodes ever again, and when I say consistently, I mean throughout multiple episodes in a row. There are very few seconds of tedium between most of these episodes of this season, and a lot of it has to do with the expressive animation. Now that they've sold enough Sponge Undies, they can afford to put in a few more frames of animation. Just 2. It looks smooth, like warm hog lard. At some point, I can imagine they must have thought about the show's artistic merit and figured putting more time and resources into making the show look better would be the most feasible, because it's not like they're trying to compete with any other networks or certain shows like, say, Adventure Time. You know, the show that Nickelodeon famously rejected and became a much better show by comparison when it was pitched to its direct competitor. A show that would have been objectively much worse if Nickelodeon picked it up, because it probably would have ended up like any of the failed buddy comedy cartoons they made to casually compete with it. A show that has consistent depth, nuance, lovable characters, charm, a compelling story that isn't loosely stuck in a continuity bubble that was still good even when there were episodes that went in weird directions in the later seasons, substance, creativity, finesse, a smart sense of humor that doesn't always need to be edgy, nifty catchphrases, dynamic yet simplistic character designs, subtextual philosophy, more substance. Yeah, I'm comparing apples to oranges here, but where the hell was I going with this? I genuinely can't remember, but now I want to go watch Adventure Time, and that show came out way before SpongeBob started getting good again. God damn, I love the animation in that show. Oh yeah, that's right, I was talking about SpongeBob.
Come along with me, so playable under the sea. We can go on horror Squidward, and poke him when he pees.
But yeah, maybe they rewatched Ren and Stimpy instead and thought, golly gee, when's the last time we had animation this good? Let's make the show more expressive, but let's add moisture to it, because Sponge. Also, fuck John K, he belongs in a wood chipper. Needless to say, I enjoy animation with lots of exaggeration and fluidity, because it takes a lot of time, calculation, and persistence to make. Or maybe I just like masochism. I also like seeing ridiculous faces every time I pause to go turn my stove off when I forget that I turned it on in the first place, especially after a tall can of Deschutes. It's not worth burning the apartment down, even for bacon. A lot of the frames from this season alone should have an expression or two that will possibly make you chuckle, unless you got rectal cranial syndrome. I mean, even I'll admit that there are moments that don't require as much detail in the animation and the energy becomes more amplified than it probably should, but what do you guys have against silly cartoon faces? Come on, most of these faces aren't that scary. The animators just realized how many stills from previous seasons became internet sensations that busted out the Adderall and turned the show into ever-evolving meme fuel. I don't see why this should be considered a bad thing. Don't tell me you guys are getting too old for this shit. It's just SpongeBob on C4, the Skittles flavor. I mean, yeah, there are a few frames that have given me maybe 1 or 2 night terrors, but it's far and few in between. At least they're dedicating themselves to putting in the extra effort. It's actually kind of astounding how the animation and visual style has evolved over the years. While it hasn't exactly been a smooth timeline, it's fascinating to think about how much it's changed. While I can't say the animation has been absolutely horrible during the seasons after the movie, you will see a noticeable difference if you were to watch them compared to any season past season 9. Granted, even the original 3 seasons didn't have animation that was super fluid. Season 1 was entirely in cell animation and had a bit of a rough style to it, but through its primordial exterior, it still had visual gags and moments that were impressive, humorous, and iconic for their time. Seasons 2 and 3 switched over to digital, had a cleaner animation style, and had a complete aesthetic overhaul, also using live action bits, stock footage, puppetry, and image manipulation along with the 2D animation. The following seasons through season 9, the animation did become a bit more fluid, and every once in a while we would see stuff like image manipulation, but it would be animated in Flash and it would become more elaborate. Sort of like what Jib Jab used to do with their animations, but with less jokes about presidential figures. So with that said, I have to retract any negative statements I said about Rodeo Days' Flash animation. I still can't stand that episode, but at least the animation at the end of that episode was pretty good, at least for its time. time. We also had the occasional instances where they would dabble with 3D modeling, with questionable results. Also, the later seasons have had some episodes where there are some pretty creative visuals, like Squidward and Clarinetland, for example. Though if there are some general complaints I have about the visuals of seasons 5 through 9, there's something about the character designs and how they're animated that make the left side of my abdomen sore. Like, the color palettes are considerably brighter and the designs themselves look a little bit too polished. Like, the movement can be so static yet oddly fluid at times, and everything looks too squeaky clean, so much so that it frustrates me at times. Like an itch on the surface of your nose that just won't go away no matter the angle you scratch it. Also, speaking of the incidentals, am I the only one who can't stand how the townspeople look? Like, I've definitely alluded to my distaste towards what the townspeople became as a hive mind of NPCs, but sweet, dry lubrication on a bike chain. There's something about seeing them just walking around with the same bland smiles that just pisses me off in the most arbitrary way. I don't know, it just doesn't seem normal to me. Why in the good greasy fuck are they so happy all the time? Unless they decide to become an angry mob for whatever dumbass reason. I haven't even taken my meds yet and their smiles put a big frown on my face. Also, let's talk about some of the newer incidental characters. Don't get me wrong, I think most of the newer character designs do fit the show's aesthetic, and I can give the artists credit for trying some new things when they've introduced new characters, but with the influx of celebrity guests over time, we've had some pretty interesting results. I mean, Gene Simmons voicing a gluttonous tyrant in a bottomless pit seems fitting, or Johnny Depp as a stoned, muscular surfer with a chill demeanor, or Johnny Knoxville as an edgy lobster who does extreme shit, or David Bowie as... Damn it, not even David Bowie could save this character, God rest his soul. But yeah. Also, am I the only one who feels like the show has had its fair share of visual fluff? Like, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of visual gags throughout the dark age of the show that are great and have definitely cemented themselves into the public subconscious. But honestly, there are too many moments that visually look emptier than the air in my bag of kettle chips. Like mind-numbingly dull moments where the characters would, again, have bland, static smiles and they would try to be creative with the animation. But these moments look like boring attempts to entertain your ficus plants. I could imagine these seasons were probably geared towards a much younger audience at the time, besides the episodes that had their shock humor, of course, because I can imagine most of the OG fans stopped watching around that time. I stopped watching around maybe mid-season 4, or probably around the time Dungeons & Dragons came out. Overall, even if there are some cool things they did with the show during this time period, I just don't care for most of this period of the show. More power to the people that could find the middle-aged seasons to be entertaining, but I'm sticking with the bread of this shit sandwich, top and bottom. What I call the dark ages of SpongeBob may be looked at as a good period of the show for others, for one reason or another. If you've reached this far into the video and you absolutely love seasons 5 through 9, you deserve a cookie, mint chocolate chip flavor, because that shit's good. This recipe is good, by the way, you should try it. If the thought of putting sour cream in your cookies is alien to you, trust me, it's totally worth it with this recipe. But then again, it doesn't matter what generation you're from. Anyone can like anything if it makes them happy, and what can make you childishly angry can make someone else childishly ecstatic. Unless you're cynical about everything, then nobody's happy. Fast forward to season 10 and beyond, the character designs are much more lively. They show much more shifting emotion and movement in a way that hasn't been shown on the show before, at least from my memory, and that shit's fading with time. The animation actually makes me think of the 2D animation from the first two movies. The characters, having relatively simplistic designs, have so much detail in just about every pose based on the inflection of the voice acting, and most of the time it effectively keeps me engaged. I think to some folks who grew up with the middle-aged seasons, it's going to seem a bit excessive because throughout the show's existence, we haven't seen these many expressions on the show in the way that they're being presented. When you become so accustomed to something that becomes part of your comfort zone, it can be difficult to see the good if it changes in a drastic sense.
Unless those changes are complete bullshit.
Take it from me, I've already spent 2 hours bitching about this show. But from my perspective, at least I can say the newer episodes can keep me almost consistently entertained by their visuals alone. Even if it's hyper-stimulating my ADHD, at least something is consistently stimulating me though. It even took me to dinner. But of course, being the SpongeBoomer that I am, I will always prefer the Golden Age. For the time of the Golden Age, Season 2 and 3 were immaculately paced, and the expressions illustrated the characters' emotive states and reactions perfectly without too much or too little exaggeration. There is no doubt that those seasons had a lot of heart, soul, and a unique way of how they conveyed their senses of humor. But in my opinion, they are completely different and, dare I say, incomparable to what they're doing with these newer episodes because of the directions that they decide to take with the show's development, along with the resources resources and time that they were given. As you can imagine, they made those older episodes on comparably smaller budgets and had to resort to finding more creative ways to express their sense of humor, all within a comparably shorter period of time, and they went above and beyond what they established in the first season with it. I don't care how much I'm gushing over these seasons, both seasons 2 and 3 are like lightning in a bottle. Besides how they illustrated and animated things at the time, it was like a perfect combination of classic cartoon humor and absurdist humor. The vibes, the timing, and the execution from those episodes cannot be replicated because they were simply products of their time, they are very much ahead of their time, and they are completely timeless. I'm just raising the pedestal a little higher every time I talk about them. Not to mention there were very specific character dynamics that made the show distinct from others too, well at least with how they portrayed them. Not to mention the social commentary and the subtext of some of the dialogue and a handful of the jokes. Granted, there have been elements of this throughout the show's existence, even in the bad seasons, but the newer episodes, while they do at times retain aspects of these older seasons, do take some influence from the more modern ones. Some aspects work well in terms of execution, some not so much. Also, when I say aspects from the older seasons, I'm not referring to all the references that this season has to older episodes, because the season really wants to remind you that those episodes exist. Friendly reminder that nostalgia is an alluringly bitter fruit that will become sweet if it feels like it, and unsavory when you least expect it.
But that's why it's important to constantly try to expand your horizons and find new things. The past might not have everything that you're looking for, but the present has everything that you need. Keep an open mind.
If anything, it feels as if they've updated the characters more so as if they were still somewhat from that time period, but also taking into account that the characters have changed quite a bit over the years. Though each character is more or less a case-by-case scenario, it comes down to how the characters are written and how they partake in the various roles that they play out. So I've noticed some folks aren't that big on the plots of a certain portion of the newer episodes, that some plots are too nonsensical or downright awful, therefore it makes the episode less enjoyable to watch. Well, the issues with plots are a case-by-case scenario between each episode, as we've definitely seen some terrible plots throughout the series, and the pacing has been about as consistent as the frosting on top of your average Pop-Tart. I have to ask, does the plot make a SpongeBob episode good or bad by default? Better question, what are you looking to get out of a SpongeBob episode in general? Personally, I think even if the idea for an episode is stupid, if it can make me laugh consistently and not break my immersion too much, then it could be enjoyable or at least passable. A plot won't necessarily break my immersion, though it depends on how things are sequenced and or what the characters do in their particular scenario, but a bad episode of SpongeBob will rarely make me laugh and will more than likely make me want to watch something more engaging, like Adventure Time. Maybe something horrible happens that just kills my mood, or it's the way the characters treat one another, or shit just isn't funny. I watch SpongeBob primarily because I want to laugh. I don't want to think about complex plot points or character lore. I just want my dopamine surge. I want to see ridiculous shit happen, and I want that ridiculous shit to be funny. The best kind of jokes in SpongeBob are the ones that would go completely out in left field, yet they would still make tangible sense and context as to what goes on in the episode. Sometimes making little to no sense, but being ridiculous enough to the point of being humorous. The best kind of plot threads come from when one absurd situation tops another, and it becomes more absurd as the episode progresses, where the jokes are baked right into the fucking crust of the plot. I mostly laugh at the jokes and circumstances surrounding the plot points. That is what made those golden era episodes so memorable. Also the impeccable comedic timing. Though what I think makes a SpongeBob episode truly unenjoyable is when it lacks the imagination and creativity that's supposed to come with the absurdity, or if the ideas or jokes are just mind-numbingly stupid or lukewarm, or if the execution feels like it's holding back. Of course, that is totally subjective, although I rarely got pissed off from most of these episodes because of their plots. Just about every episode got me to laugh at least twice, and a good portion of those laughs came from my belly, with the exception of a few episodes. If anything, in the newer episodes, there are moments where I do feel like pacing can be an issue because of how fast and tangential the animation can get at times, and I sometimes have to squint because of how bright the color palettes are. Seriously, considering how bright SpongeBob is, I sometimes feel like I'm staring into an oncoming pair of car lights and my astigmatism is acting up. But as for the comedic elements, this season tickled my pickle. I think this season has its heart in the right place. I think the humor can be relatively witty with both the visual gags and some of the dialogue. The overall comedic timing is very well executed, and for the most part, they did these characters justice for what they become. I have a weird feeling people won't agree with me on that last statement, let alone any of the shit that I just said. But I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to bare my heart and soul out into the infinite void that is YouTube and the internet. Now let's talk about the characters. I bet most of you are waiting anxiously to see if I was going to talk about the characters, right? Seeing as that's pretty much all my channel is known for. In that case, Merry Christmas. First of all, I don't want to say these characters have done a complete paradigm shift in terms of their behavior from what they became over the years, but I sense an array of different vibes from them. Some vibes that are familiar, whether it's a good or a bad thing based on the particular scenario, but overall they're much more in the green than in the red. But we're looking at where they are in the present day. Of course, we can't help but compare and contrast with everything that's been done before, but every character has their own journey, as how it is in life. Before proceeding, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that the characters have retained some qualities that made me love them in the first place, even if their negative traits tend to rear their ugly heads above the surface for oxygen every once in a while. Sometimes these negative traits result in hilarity for one reason or another. In these upcoming segments, I'm going to talk about what I noticed with the characters in this season to the best of my ability, without going too overboard with characters I haven't talked about yet. Considering I'm making a video reviewing every episode of the season, don't expect me to go anywhere beyond knuckles deep. Plankton is still the same Saturday morning cartoon villain we've known and loved since his first episode. He's still the same evil genius who wants to have absolute power and control over everything, but he can't because he's tiny as fuck, if you catch my drift. And of course, he's still obsessed with stealing the Krabby Patty's secret formula, because reasons. He's arguably the only character on the show that never needed a change in terms of his personality traits, because they're as entertaining as they are devious. The only real problem with Plankton has been the whole vicious cycle that he's trapped in. His existence has been mainly devoted to trying to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, yet he's still the funniest character in the entire show, and the sheer consistency of his hilarity continues. I don't need to go any deeper because I have a massive video on Plankton on the horizon. All I have to say is, I'm working on it! In this season, Plankton gets a pretty hefty spotlight, not where he has a major role in every episode he's part of, but he does have a noteworthy presence. You would suspect that just about every episode with him as a major character, it would center around him trying to steal the formula, right? Well, you're operating out of a preconceived notion, and you're partially accurate. As you can imagine, there are episodes where he goes to great, ridiculous lengths to try and pursue the proverbial carrot on a stick that he's been chasing for the past 2 decades. In one episode, The Krusty Bucket, he makes a hybrid clone out of his own and Mr. Krabs' DNA to try and manipulate Krabs into handing over the formula, only for the clone to buy both of them out of business. I swear to God, I didn't think that description was going to be as suggestive as it sounded after I said it out loud. In another episode, The Ghost of Plankton, he turns himself into a ghost in an attempt to steal the formula as well, which is probably my favorite Plankton episode of the season. In another episode, The Hankering, when Krabs admits that he has a chum addiction, if you remove the H from that word, that statement becomes 69 times funnier. Plankton tries to exploit it to swindle Krabs out of the formula, and in another one, Plankton's intern, of all characters, he hires Pearl as his intern. Why else but to try and get closer to the formula? I can't make this shit up. I don't think I need to do a recap of One Course Meal again to explain why a brief description of the premise alone would probably trigger some flashbacks. But I digress. Out of the 18 episodes where he makes an appearance, I'm pleasantly surprised that Plankton's episodes aren't completely centered around the same old song and dance number. In fact, there are quite a few episodes this season where the typical game of cat and mouse doesn't become the core plot. Most of the episodes where he stars in a major role has him doing other stuff. For a few examples, in one episode, King Plankton, he becomes the monarch of a colony of sea monkeys. After years of not having the opportunity to live out his twisted little power fantasies, besides the first movie, he finally gets the opportunity to rule over subjects that are slightly below his tiny stature. In another episode, Plankton's old chum, he manipulates SpongeBob into spreading rotten chum all over town by telling him it's for a holiday, because SpongeBob is that dense. When he isn't doing heinous shit, he's doing shit that isn't heinous. In another episode, Karen's Baby, he and Karen raise a child together. I know what you're thinking, and it had me asking the same damn question. In Handemonium, he also has an arm wrestling competition with Krabs where he brings the hand holding the chum bucket to life to beat him. Then he uses it to try to steal the formula, because it's an easy way to flesh out the rest of the episode. And that's pretty much it for him. Overall, I like what they did with Plankton in this season. They did my favorite little tic-tac good. For those who have a burning curiosity on whether or not my opinions on Krabs have changed over the years, no, not really. But with the newer episodes, I can at least laugh at him for what he is, a dumb, penny-pinching asshole. Mr. Krabs is still the same exploitative, greedy sack of armpit pus that he's always been. Literally, this man hasn't changed one bit. Kinda like Plankton, but he's not any better. In fact, given some of the shit that he's done over the course of the show's development, it would be slightly difficult to decide which character is more evil. One who tries to do evil things things but sucks at doing evil things and also wants to steal his ex-best friend's success? Or the other, who is the successful ex-best friend who uses success to exploit and manipulate his environment for his own monetary gain? Kind of a no-brainer in my eyes.
Then again, Plankton wants global domination. Krabs is only motivated by money.
The only thing Krabs cares about is money, and he could care less about how he obtains it, even if it causes pain and suffering upon others. Although he fundamentally hasn't changed, the way that they use him in the season is played to full comedic effect. Now it seems as if he has more minor appearances in this season, though as you can imagine, he has his moments in the sun. In the Krusty Slammer, he converts his restaurant into a prison to try and make money and torture Plankton after he gets arrested for mocking him with graffiti. In another episode, Senior Discount, he gets in a full-on war of age with Old Man Jenkins as he tries to kick him out of his restaurant for being old and crazy. Oh, and it's revealed early on in the season that Old Man Jenkins is the one who supplies Krabs with all of his product. So Krabs basically tries to ban the sole entity that's keeping his business afloat because he's an old weirdo. In another episode, Break-In, he discovers a break room in the Krusty Krab, reiterating that nobody's taken a break at the Krusty Krab since the Chum famine of '59. Speaking of Chum, in The Hankering, it's revealed that he has an affinity for Chum because he was forced to eat Chum during his Navy days. Alright, I just talked about that one. Oh, and if you don't already know, it looks like Mr. Krabs and Mrs. Puff are officially an item now. They have 2 episodes where they go on dates, My Two Krabsies and Kooky Cooks, and they're both fucking hilarious. Throughout most of his appearances, I thought he was funny. Still a piece of shit, but a funny piece of shit, and he's too legit to quit.
Oh, I'm feeling tutti fruity. Mr. Krabs got a big fat booty.
Sandy is still, as you would guess, Sandy. She still has an obsession with science, she's still a Texan stereotype, and she's still one of SpongeBob's best friends. But surprisingly, she doesn't have much of a presence in this season, so I can't say there's a whole lot to talk about extensively. She has maybe 2 major roles, and for the other 6 episodes she's featured in, she's either supporting or has a minor role. She has a brief presence in the Nitwitting as a member of FEMA. She also narrates the antics of Gary and Spot in Gary and Spot. As for her few supporting roles, she's in Sandy's Nutty Nieces, where her name is in the damn title, but SpongeBob gets more of a spotlight than she does, where her nieces come to town and she gives SpongeBob the task of watching over them while she makes them a gift. Then there's SpongeBob's Bad Habit, where she tries to help SpongeBob overcome a nail-biting habit, and then Hiccup Plague, where she tries to help SpongeBob get over a ridiculous case of the hiccups. The only 2 major roles that she has out of the 51 segments of the season is in A Cabin in the Kelp, where she goes on a cabin trip with Karen and Mrs. Puff, and SpongeBob's Birthday Blowout, which is pretty self-explanatory, and I'll talk about it a bit more when I get to SpongeBob's part. It's a bit disappointing to see that she's effectively sitting this season out. I mean, she seemed to have many more roles than previous seasons. It's not like her character became that unpopular. I guess Sandy got the shaft, and that makes me sad. Guess what? They made Gary fucking adorable. I don't mean that as if he wasn't cute before, but it's like they turned his cuteness up to 11. Gary has always been SpongeBob's best friend next to Patrick, being like your typical house cat, but for a long while, especially around season 7 and season 8, instead of being known as SpongeBob's adorable pet, he's garnered a reputation for being the subject of animal abuse and mistreatment. Even though throughout the majority of the series this isn't the case, but there have been enough episodes to garner said reputation. Although with this more recent season, things seem much different. Though he only gets a few episodes where he has a major role, his appearances throughout this season are always such a joy to experience. It feels as if they've retained a lot of the innocent charm that made him so lovable to begin with, but there's something about him that's even more cuddly. He seems like a happy little mollusk, and that makes me happy. One thing I absolutely love is the friendship that he has with Spot, which is explored in the episode Gary and Spot, where it's revealed that he's secretly best friends with Plankton's pet amoeba, Spot, and the 2 of them go around Bikini Bottom causing all sorts of adorable chaos. It's one of my favorite episodes of the entire season too. He also has an episode where he sprouts appendages and causes more chaos in Gary's legs. If you've ever imagined what it would be like if Gary had SpongeBob's arms and legs, this episode might fill a void for you. It sounds like I'm making him out to be a monster, but I can assure you that any debauchery he has, it's all out of cutesy innocence. Which, if you think about it, if cutesy innocence was metaphorically part of the cardiovascular system of the show, it would be the carotid artery. I also have to quickly mention one other appearance of his in Pineapple RV. He may have a minor role in the episode overall, though his appearance in this episode just makes it more wholesome. But yeah, good old Gare Bear's back and cuter than ever. I don't care if he's covered in slime, I just want to hold him and give him a big old smooch on his eye stalk. Squidward Tentacles, the legend, the myth, the slippery bastard himself. Still the same grumpy sack of ink farts, still old as dirt. Wishing he was a revered artist in his twilight years, still a miserable cashier with a possible god complex. It feels like he's become more self-absorbed than I remember. Like he's always been a bit masturbatory with his work, and after years of making tributes to himself, he just wants some kind of recognition, but the world keeps throwing it back in his face. Still tone deaf, no matter how hard he blows on his windpipe, nobody will ever find peace and tranquility from those jagged melodies. Squidward seems to be a bit more mischievous in this season too, like he's always been a bit misconductive throughout the series in those moments where his own childlike nature comes out, but there's something different about his behavior, like he's gone knuckin' futz, and if there's anything that's driven him mad, it's the lack of positive attention. This poor creature has put so much time and effort into his creative endeavors, and nobody likes anything that he creates. Throughout the season, he tries desperately to put himself out there and is more or less met with the same result: harsh rejection. Episodes like Insecurity Guards and Mind the Gap come to mind. On top of that, as you'd guess, he's still stuck at the same dead-end job, dealing with the same assholes all the time, working with someone who he seems to have nothing but absolute disdain for. At least that's what we see of him most of the time, emphasis on most of the time. On top of that, even when he tries to do his own thing or wants to just relax and have time for himself after being subjected to the ritualistic optional slave labor, he can't even get that, because SpongeBob and Patrick won't leave him alone. Squids on a Bus, Jolly Lodgers, and Pineapple RV come to mind, though Pineapple RV is a good episode and does more justice in a positive light to the scenario it entails. Squid on a Bus and Jolly Lodgers just piss me off, because as you can imagine, they fall under the famous Mobro Studios phrase, "You know what I'm talking about." This poor creature is stuck in the void of his own personal hell. I just want to hug him, even if he smells really bad, despite what SpongeBob says. This may sound like his presence throughout the season is mostly a negative experience, but like Krabs and Plankton, I still can't help but laugh at Squidward's misfortune.
Because in this season, Squidward can be a real dick sometimes, but karma always finds a way to nip him in the ink sack. Might I also mention that there are some episodes that show Squidward at his absolute best.
Pat Hart's Squid and Krusty Concessionaries are also great examples and show Squidward at his absolute best. So yeah, even Squidward has some great moments and he still makes me laugh till my intestines rupture. Also, here's a daily reminder that Squidward is, in fact, a goddamn octopus. I will personally fight any of you who try to say otherwise, with my words, because you would probably kick my ass if I took a swing at you. I'm also a pacifist by nature. Please don't steal my lunch money. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I fucking love Patrick once more. Patrick used to be my favorite character, then he became my least favorite, now he's pretty high up there again. After years of putting up with his stupidity, I can now laugh at Patrick's stupidity. I realize that sounds incredibly contradictory, but in this context there are two different tiers of stupidity. One which is lighthearted and misguided, the other is inconsiderate and difficult. And in this season, he's more like the first tier. I used to hate what he became because he was pretty much becoming the latter. Do you know how often I would get pissed at his mere existence since like season 5? Every time he would make an appearance, I would go into a fit of childlike rage because I knew he was going to either say or do something that would piss me off. But things feel different this time around. Like his demeanor doesn't feel the same. Honestly, he seems more like the dumb yet supportive sweetheart that I used to love when I was a kid. But he still has his issues. Issues that will be more thoroughly looked at in his video after Plankton. But for the sake of this video, since I know most people who followed this channel really want to hear what I have to say about him, let's talk about him a bit more. You know how Patrick would constantly be used as a means to ignite conflict in an episode? You know how he would sometimes be shoehorned into an episode just to create chaos because he's stupid? Well, he still does that, but more times than not, when they use him, they actually make the shit he does entertaining and funny, and he doesn't get all insufferable or smug about it. In the bad episodes, his antics would get tedious, grating, and frustrating, like two porcupines fucking on a barbecue. Now it's like he's just there at the wrong time and his curiosity causes him to make choices without thinking instead of feeling like he's just there to add conflict. One could say he's always been like that, but not to the point where every time you would see him it would just invoke anger. With these newer episodes, I view him more like a happy-go-lucky doofus than a stubborn tyrant. He's still childishly stubborn and can let his emotions guide him into destructive behavior, but I don't always get that vibe from him in a good portion of these newer episodes. Overall, I think Patrick is back to being a good boy, but he's still stupid and gluttonous. Did I mention that he's gluttonous too? Because he's very gluttonous. He will literally lose control of himself the second that he sees food, but he's a good, lovable chonkster who deserves belly rubs. Rub the tummy, get all the honey. There's even an episode dedicated to his gluttonous tendencies, the Goofy Newbie, where he gets a job at the Goofy Goober because free ice cream. And boy, howdy does that pink boy get his fill. One thing I love about him is that he seems like the kind of character who might be tough to get along with at first because of his stupidity, but the more that you're around him, he might become your best friend. Episodes like Swamp Mates and Pat Hart's Squid come to mind.
Did I even mention that Bubble Bass is a reoccurring character? That's pretty fucking cool.
I mean, he's been SpongeBob's ride or die since the beginning of time, and there are some episodes with the two of them bonding and or getting themselves involved in various hijinks, like Insecurity Job, Who Are Zoo, Biddy Sitting, and Escape from Beneath Glove World. Patrick even indoctrinates SpongeBob into a cult in the Nitwitting, a cult that does not brainwash their members, but will literally remove their brains for initiation. He basically initiates SpongeBob into Las Plagas.
Gloria Las Plagas, SpongeBob!
But yeah, I love Patrick again. So as much as I'm looking forward to giving Patrick a metaphorical anal fissure with my exaggerated verbal anger, I'm also not looking forward to it because I feel like I'm gonna do my big pink baby biscuit wrong, but also fuck him because he turns into a real dickhead.
Who you calling dickhead?
You motherfucker! And of course, we have the star of the titular show himself, SpongeBob. Good lord, what a journey this character's been on. A dreadfully long roller coaster of a journey. I think I might throw up a bit inside of my mask. Give me a moment. That was an acid burp. Sorry. Anyways, how did he behave this season? Better question, how do you think he behaved this season? Well, after a few decades of working the same damn low-paying job, living his best damn life in a world where anything is damn possible, where things go wrong all the damn time, trying at the highest damn magnitude to keep an optimistic damn mindset because of societal expectations when the world is an absolute damn chaos, even if it means forcing his hyperactive optimistic energy on all the damn people around him. He's more or less what you'd expect him to be, clinically damn insane. He's still the same hyperactive Goofy Goober we've known him since our days of youth, but he's a bit crazy now, and has been arguably getting crazier with every season. But believe it or not, he's not nearly as abhorrent as he has been. In fact, he's still very optimistic and supportive of his friends, not just to his friends, but to every character he comes across. For a few examples, he helps Old Man Jenkins fix up his barn in Farmer Bob. He and Patrick try to help Squidward by taking him on a road trip after they screw up his means of transportation for his vacation in Pineapple RV. He helps Sandy babysit her nieces and Sandy's nutty nieces. He helps the Dirty Bubble try to stay clean and Dirty Bubble Returns. He helps Mr. Krabs out with a few dates with Mrs. Puff and both My Two Krabsies and Kooky Cooks. He helps Patrick at his job at the Goofy Goober in the Goofy Newbie, and he tries to help Patrick overcome a problem he has where he goes apeshit when he hears the sound of a bell ringing in Patrick's tantrum. The dude is a true homie in every step of the way. Not to mention, maybe this is just my preference, but he didn't aggravate me as much this season as he has in others. In fact, I ended up laughing at and with him more than I felt the urge to throw my toys around. His naive nature feels a bit more charming at times, even if his occasional lack of foresight gives me terminal diarrhea. He's crazy, but he means well. I would say the episodes that showcase his insanity the most this season would be Plankton's Old Chum, which I've already talked about, the Nitwitting, where at some point he completely loses any intelligence he once had, Stormy Weather, where he becomes friends with a fucking rain cloud and gets in some kind of all-out war with a weatherman who wants to kill it, Squids on a Bus and Jolly Lodgers, where he and Patrick end up torturing Squidward for about 11 minutes each, SpongeBob in Random Land, where he and Squidward go to an alternate dimension to deliver a Krabby Patty where the two of them witness pure insanity firsthand, and SpongeBob's Bad Habit, where he develops a bad nail-biting habit to the point where he starts eating other people's nails and uncovers some interesting aspects of his own psychology. Not every episode here has him acting like a spaz, but sweet boobies on a biscuit does he do some crazy shit. But most of the shit that he does is funny. Like, actually funny. But of course, there is one episode that puts the icing on the goddamn cake of this season. SpongeBob's Birthday Blowout. In this episode, it's SpongeBob's birthday, and all of his friends and a good portion of the characters throughout the series work together to throw him a surprise birthday party. It is what I consider the most potent tribute to the late Stephen Hellenberg, and is close to being my favorite episode of the season. Overall, SpongeBob, the main star of the show, is more like the SpongeBob that I grew up with. But he's changed. Although I can enjoy him despite the changes he's gone through. Season 12 made me want to talk about SpongeBob again. After a long period of time where I didn't have the confidence in myself based on my attempts to try and come back, watching it sort of sparked an old flame in me. A flame that never truly died, but maybe needed to fizzle out for a bit to be ignited once again. Seeing the amount of heart, soul, and effort that was put into this season has given me a newfound inspiration, and I intend to follow it in whatever direction it takes me. With that said, I feel more confident moving forward, and I'm pretty excited to see where I can take things on this channel and in whatever I decide to create. Not only with the SpongeBob character analysis videos, but with content creation in general. I look forward to seeing where this journey takes me. So, when's the next SpongeBob video coming out?
When raspberries fly out of my urethra.
Krabby Patties. Order up, it's Krabby Patty time. SpongeBob with his Krabby Patty machine are going to bed now. Krabby Patty for Gary. Night night, you little mollusk. Sauce on my tie. Fuck.